Welcome to the second meeting of the House Budget Review Committee on Primary and Secondary Education Workforce Development. I'll ask everyone please silence their electronic devices as we get started. And will the secretary please call roll?
Representative Bojanowski.
Here.
Representative Bowling. Representative Kleins.
Here.
Representative Bray. Representative Petrie. Representative Lewis.
Here.
Chair Banta.
Present. Thank you. And we have a quorum, so I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our first meeting if there are no changes.
Motion.
I have a motion and a second. Thank you. All in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Thank you. Minutes approved. Okay, our first presentation is School Faculty Assistance Fund Audit. If you could please come to the desk. Introduce yourselves. Make sure your microphones are on when you're speaking. Thank you very much.
Hello, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm Lauren Ferguson, Chief of Staff for State Auditor Allison Ball, and I have with us Shauna Kraus, she's our Deputy State Auditor, and Alan Norville with Blue & Co., who completed this audit.
Thank you, and you may proceed.
Thank you. We're presenting today on the School Facilities Assistance Fund audit, and just to first outline the audit scope. So, as I know, Chairwoman, you're aware, the House bill, the budget bill outlined the scope of this audit, specifically that it would look at each school, the project, each school's scope, cost, and available local resources, and determine appropriate state funding, and then also that the Auditor of Public Accounts would certify this audit. It also outlined that it shall be conducted by an independent third-party contractor. So in this instance, that is Blue & Co. that we have present with us today. Just a quick update on responsibilities. I think this is sometimes a helpful framing details for our purposes. Blue & Co., as I outlined, are the third-party auditor who completed the audit. They worked with us to set out the agreed-upon procedures or the scope of the audit, which we relied directly on the budget bill to do. Each school district was responsible for providing the most up-to-date information to Blue & Co., and then at the end of the process, our office reviewed the documentation that was provided, certified the report, and then transmitted it to LRC. Just a little bit more background. You see listed here the 20 projects that were identified by KDE for GAP funding. I won't linger here too much because we'll go through each of the slides, each of the schools individually. But again, that's just a big picture of those 20 schools. And then in addition to the things I already mentioned of available local resources and things like that, House Bill 6 also outlined criteria for SFAF awards, and Blue & Co. also looked at this specific criteria. So I won't read all the slides so you all know that you're more than familiar, but it included things like if it was an A1 or A2 school, whether it was an athletic facility or not, if it had the specific BG number assigned by the Kentucky Department of Ed, and then the school priority, and if the nickel tax had been levied. So I think it's helpful to know we have slides for all 20 schools, and rather than read all the slides to you all, we're just going to point out what Blue & Co. found to be the current gap needed by each school. And before doing that, I know that the members of the General Assembly are aware, but we think it's important to note that this is not our assertion of what the schools should or should not get, but it's just simply testing the criteria that's outlined in the bill. So we, of course, defer to the legislature, Madam Chair, on your authority in that process. So first up, we have Adair County. Their project is a new middle school, and after conducting the agreed-upon procedures, it was determined that their current gap funding needed was about $7.6 million. Our next school is Augusta Independent. This project is for a new gymnasium. Their current gap funded is $5.3 million. I'm happy to say the full number, but I figured just for brevity, we'll keep it similar like that so you all can see it on the slide. Bardstown Independent, they're renovating their high school, middle school, and career center, and their current gap needed was determined by Blue & Co. to be just over $43 million. Beechwood Independent, their projects include a high school and elementary school renovations, and their current gap needed was determined to be $105,000. We have a couple schools that were fully funded prior to this audit being conducted. So they were listed as schools that would be reviewed, but then in fact did not need to be because funding was already provided. So Breathitt County, this is one specific instance. They're fully funded by House Bill 725. So in this audit, they were not considered or evaluated just because their project's entirely funded already. Crittenden County, that's our other county that they actually asked us to be pulled out of the process. They said that they decided to decrease the scope of their project, and when they decreased the scope, they had enough funding. So they chose to remove themselves from the process and not ask for additional gap funding. Fleming County, their project is to build a new elementary school. It was determined that their current gap needed, based on the criteria defined, is about $15 million. And then Garrett County, they're doing high school construction. Their current gap needed is $14.9 million. Harrison County, based on the criteria established by the budget bill, the auditors concluded that their current gap needed is $50.6 million. Johnson County, they're building a new high school, an area technology center, and a bus garage. And it was determined that their current gap needed based on the criteria was $78 million. Lewis County, that's the second school, Madam Chair, that did not need local funding, the third school. They found enough local funding and decided to remove themselves from the process. Marion County, their project is for a new elementary school. Their current gap needed based on the criteria, it was determined to be $19.7 million. Powell County is also a new elementary school. Their current gap needed was determined to be $5.9 million. Somerset Independent, their projects include middle school bus and drop-off canopy, an auditorium, an elementary school roof replacement, and the procedures determined that their current gap needed was $11.7 million. Walton Verona, their project is a new elementary school. The Blue & Co. determined that they needed a current gap of $48,000. Washington County's projects include high school construction, performing arts center, classrooms, a PE complex, multi-purpose area, and parking. We have the numbers here for you all of the current gap needed. We felt that was helpful today to point out the specific math connected to the project. But you'll note, so the current gap needed shows $27.6 million, but you'll notice the asterisk on this one, which is different from other slides, and that's specifically that the other criteria that we referenced earlier, including the project type and the priority, that this specific project failed some of the criteria outlined in House Bill 6. So our report flags these are the numbers, but also we've noted in the report that it fails the criteria outlined by House Bill 6 to be eligible for the funding. Wayne County, they're building an elementary school and early childhood center. Their current gap needed, it was determined by Blue & Co. to be $0. Williamstown Independent, their project is an auditorium, and it was determined that $7.4 million was needed to complete this project. And Woodford County, their project is a high school. Their current gap needed was determined to be $0. And that's it. Some of the fluctuation that you'll notice, specifically Wayne County and Woodford County, had to do with local funding that had become available, some bonding ability. And we're happy to elaborate on anything you have or to answer any questions. That's a quick run through from the schools. I just want to make sure that we didn't bore you too much, but also provided the information. So thank you.
No, I appreciate that very much. Do I have any questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Klein.
So thank you, Madam Chair. I have one. So when you see the current gap, like we'll use this for an example. Mm-hmm. So it was delayed. So is it safe to say that they went out and secured the funding on their own?
In some instances, that's the case. There are numerous factors throughout, the 20 schools that would require or that would cause the gap to change. So in some instances, the gap changed because the cost of projects over the course of time increased. So some schools had that happen. Other schools had, like you said, they went and found additional funding, and that funding was made available and was, determined to be available. One complicating factor that you all will likely hear, and I think it's important to note, is that school districts, we had several school districts who had additional funding that their desire has been to use that for a separate project. So, they have a full total of funding, but they may say, we want to use 50% of this for the project we're asking for funding for, and 50% of this for a second project, which is understandable. Our auditors don't have the ability, though, and part of the budget bill did not ask for us to determine if things had or hadn't been earmarked. So if they had been specifically committed to a project, that was noted. But we were directed to look at local funding available. And those words are pretty clear and direct and weren't meant. So that's what we're providing today. So I think you may hear feedback about some fluctuations that specifically are connected to local funding available and the school's desires to do additional projects. We just weren't, under our standards, permitted to really fluctuate in that way, if that's helpful.
Yep, follow up. Go ahead.
Yeah, my only concern was like if I'm a school district, I get penalized like a Woodford or a Walton Vernon or a B because I went ahead and found funding rather than just wait. So that was just my concern. No question. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any further questions? Okay. You guys were it on the agenda today. Thank you very, very much. Do you mind sending that slide to me?
Yes.
Your slide?
Yes, we're happy to. I believe Liz has a copy. I'm happy to
Never
resend
mind.
it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Please follow up with any questions that you have. Representative Kleins would be more than happy to answer any additional questions as well. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chairman Banta. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it.
Thank you so much. Oh. Okay. 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 All right. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. If there are no questions, do I have a motion for adjournment? Okay. We are